In this lesson, I'm going to demystify the diminished scale by talking about a technique called symmetrical cycling. This is a follow-up to my first part lesson, which really shows you my system of making the diminished scale much easier on the guitar. So if you've missed the first part, then please check out that video, which is linked unlisted. If you're brand new to the channel and you want a structured guide on learning jazz guitar, then I've also linked my free beginner jazz guitar course down there as well. So if some of this is confusing to you, then please check out that resource. And lastly, if you want a downloadable PDF for this lesson or the first one, then please check out another link which is also in the description. Let's get into the lesson. Symmetrical cycling basically means taking an idea up or down in minor thirds. It's a great technique that you can use with a diminished scale, and it offers numerous possibilities, especially when you're adapting one initial line. So let's get into the first example and I'll show you what you can do with some of these ideas. So the first line sounds like this. So all we're basically doing is applying this over a 2-5-1. So we're really thinking of maybe like an A flat diminished or a G7 flat 9. If we're thinking about it as being a G7 flat 9, then we're starting on the 5th of the chord, moving that idea up a minor third, front cycling, going up, and then resolving that to the 3rd of the chord. So this idea could also be back cycled though. So if we take the same idea, that's back cycling, right? So we're moving the idea down. We can front cycle as much as what we want. We could start down here. It's the concept that's more important and the pattern which is symmetrical. So that's idea number 1. As it's written, it demonstrates front cycling, but you could easily adapt this to go either way. The next idea demonstrates back cycling, and it sounds like this. So this pattern basically approaches each of the guide tones, the diminished chord tones, from a semitone below. So the first one in this particular key is the 7th there, the 13th fret of the high E string. We come in at that from a semitone below and then falling to the next note. So like that. You could also play that note there if you like that. So either one is fine. The idea is that you keep it going until it resolves. So with the fingering that I've got written out on the PDF, this line sounds like this. Once again, you can also take that cell and you can maybe front cycle it and you can resolve it that way, or you could just kind of partially back cycle it in something like a short 2-5-1. The next cell also demonstrates back cycling, and it sounds like this. So what's going on here? Well, this one is a little bit more obvious. So we're just basically starting right on the guide tone, the 7th, and we're just playing literal 1-4, if you remember that from lesson 1, diminished fingerings, which are moving down in minor thirds. And then resolving to the 3rd of the C major chord. This can be shortened like in the first example. I guess you could also move it up as well. You could maybe even reverse this one so that instead of starting... That's one way that you could reverse it, by starting with the, starting lower and then going higher, front cycling the idea. Or you could perhaps invert it. Or you could start with the pattern on the 2nd string and then go to the 1st string. The next idea demonstrates front cycling, and it sounds like this. This one is a Johnny Smith style phrase which starts on the 3rd string. So initially I'm seeing those initial guide tones for G7, then I'm starting each one of those a semitone below, playing up the arpeggio, and then I'm going, in this particular example, sharp 9, flat 9. Same thing. And to be honest with you, with this one, I'm really kind of just seeing the chords, the dominant 7 chords that belong in a G half-fold diminished. So I'm thinking G7, B flat, D flat, and then E. And that's basically what I'm playing off to get all of those different shapes. This phrase is initially written out using the front cycling technique, in which it's moving up the scale. But you could easily reverse that so it descends. Like that. The next idea is in the style of Joe Pass, and it sounds like this. So once again, my target diminished notes, 7th, 5th, 3rd, flat 9, and I'm starting the phrase initially a semitone below each of those, going down, a minor 3rd, up a 4th, and then fall into that guide tone note. So then resolving it to the 3rd of the C major 7 chord. Like the other patterns, that initially starts with back cycling but could easily be made into front cycling. The last idea is another Johnny Smith idea, and it's kind of like the other one that I showed you, it's just a variation, but this one starts on the 7th of the chord, and you basically have a 1-4 arpeggio, fingering 1-4, and then you go to the sharp 9 and the flat 9 twice. So if I just play the lick, this next idea is another Johnny Smith style idea, but this one basically plays off that 1-4 fingering that I talked about in part 1, and it also moves up a minor 3rd, like many of these do. So this one starts on the 7th, goes to the flat 9, then we've got 3rd, 5th, and then we've got the sharp 9, flat 9 pattern twice, moved up to the next cell, and then resolves to the tonic of either a C major or a C minor chord. One more time. Hopefully you now understand what symmetrical cycling is. You can go up or down with any of those ideas. You can change them, invert them, do all kinds of cool stuff with them. Another thing that you can do is actually play some of the patterns in position and then move them. So for example, maybe if we take something like this pattern, which is from the list of ideas that we talked about, you could also play that just in one position. And of course you could perhaps maybe get 2 runs of a 4-note pattern in one position before moving it up. So you can do that with all kinds of diminished ideas. Maybe the other one from the sheet, the one that just kind of literally fell down the arpeggio, you could play that in position and maybe do all those kind of descending ideas in one part of the guitar neck rather than just going down on 2 strings. So this kind of thing. That's a little bit more advanced. Obviously these cycles have to be really clear before doing that, but that's just one idea as to where you can go. So it's a good idea to play up and down the neck with diminished ideas, but also in position. Sometimes it's a bit easier to go up or down and gain speed with one idea, and sometimes it makes more sense to stay in position. Of course, if it's a pattern type of idea, then you can in theory generate a longer line because you can play more runs through a cell in one position before moving to the next one. I hope that you found this video useful. If you did, please click like and subscribe to this channel. Once again, if you want a downloadable PDF to this, then please check out the link in the video description below.